I still, I'm doing really well now, but like that's probably why it spoke to me so much. Please keep
Ah,
going.
of course, of course. And so we were having fun coming up with song ideas, and he was talking about how sometimes he's so depressed that he can't get out of bed, and it's even just an accomplishment that he has to try to talk himself into like doing
Yes.
basic human things. And so
Yes.
we created this as kind of like a hype song for Micah and anybody else who could need it, to even like if you're bummed out and can't get out of bed, but you haven't, bathed in days, you're like, okay, all you want to do if you just want to take a shower. And so that's why we came up with the lyrics. It's time for Dr. Show Show to take a
Take
showy
a
show.
showy
And
show.
that's, yeah. And I mean, then a few other verses of like, going to
But
check your
that's
mail and yeah. Um,
MeMeCherry presents a series of fortunate events. Fortunate events. Fortunate events. A series of fortunate events.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back, everybody, to the latest episode of the series of Fortunate Events Podcast, brought to you by who? It's still me, MeMeCherry. And actually, today we have our first official sponsor, but we'll get to that in a second. But first, I'm joined today, the pantheon of superstars that I've had on the show, shine brighter with this new star that joins me today, which is.
Myq Kaplan.
Beep, 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 beep. Oh, and then for your beep for your people's beep bop beep bop beep.
You've really gone all out with the sound effects, and I appreciate it.
I'm a Muppet, so you're welcome. And a walking soundboard. So I'm a longtime fan, Myq Kaplan. I've been listening to Keith and the Girl. So if they've been around for 20 years, I think I've been listening for about 18, 19 of those. And so I've remember when you first came on, you're one of those longtime listeners, longtime callers. I feel like I've seen your growth along the years through your appearances on the show. So that's been so lovely to capture. So I just wanted to say thank you, A, for sharing yourself with the world. Myq Kaplan is a brilliant comedian, a wordplay wizard, and an absolute delight. Please welcome to the show, Myq Kaplan. And as I mentioned earlier, I have the first sponsor, official sponsor of SOFEPod.com. Shout out to Neil Does Art. Thank you, Neil, for being the first official sponsor. Neil creates calendars, stickers, postcards, and prints featuring the Eastern Sierra's natural beauty. And those calendars that I mentioned, they're limited quantity. Literally going as I speak, I was texting with Neil and they mentioned that they're selling like hotcakes. There's a very limited quantity, so get them. They're signed, they're beautiful. And if you go to neildoesart.com and use the promo code cherry, as in MeMeCherry, you'll get a 10% discount. So get those signed calendars while you can. Thank you for letting me prattle that off, Myq. So,
Of
as I
course.
teased just literally a second ago, you've been doing comedy for quite a while. Tell me about the comedy scene when you first started, because I know it's very different now than when you first started. And what made you
Sure.
get into comedy?
Thank you. What a a generous question. What if I was like, when I started, it was identical to how it was now. Zoom existed, and I was the same age. I've never changed. So
And
Uh,
TikTok was TikTok.
yeah,
Not a thing that a
nothing,
clock does.
just the passage of time not existing. Um, so I started doing comedy because I started before that doing music. I was the longest story as condensed as possible. My parents were music teachers. I was 4 years old when I was invited to slash required to start playing the violin. I played the violin and took lessons and
Oh,
had a lot of every Saturday I went to like an all day like kind of like a some kids go to religious school or, Hebrew school or church programs or the mosque or whatever temple. Like in our home, music was the religion. And so every weekend, like one full day, I would spend learning music, learning theory, playing in
Oh my
orchestras.
gosh.
And then sometimes on the weekdays, like I had my lesson Monday night every week as well. And then I also started playing with another group on Wednesdays. So like sometimes it was many days during the week.
And you
Music,
played the violin?
I did. I played the violin
Oh my
and
gosh. When I was little in Puerto Rico, it's one of the few regrets I have as a kid because my mom moved us around a lot. And there was a tiny blip there while we were in Puerto Rico that she would pick me up from school. She would take me to violin classes. I had like the coolest teacher. He was teaching me with the Suzuki method. And I remember having a recital, and it was the first time that I found out that like my name, my government name, not MeMeCherry, although MeMeCherry is quite the name, but that Mariana Grajales was like a historical name for Cubans. And so like this Cuban lady stops me and my mom after the recital. It's like it's burned in my memory, like your name is Mariana Grajales. And we were like, yes. And she's like, do you know what your name means? And we're like, yes. Anyways, but I say that to say the violin. So fast forward, my mom moves us to the States. I'm a teenager. The last thing I want to do is find a new teacher. And I gave up the violin. And it's one of the few regrets that I have. And so before I let you finish answering the question, I have do you see colors when you hear music?
Thank you for asking. I would say I do not
Okay.
specifically. That is, I mean, sounds like synesthesia of a
Yeah, yeah,
kind.
yeah, yeah.
And you do when you listen to any music or
No, but I know some musical people do, so I'm always
hmm.
curious about that.
Yes, I do not, but I appreciate the question. I also was learning originally via the Suzuki method, and I understand your regret, and I do not want to take that from you. But I also I didn't love the violin. I didn't love
Yeah.
having to do it,
Yeah.
and so that was a big. But I did enjoy there were parts of it that I enjoyed. I liked being good at it. I liked learning like certain, like once I knew it, but practicing wasn't my favorite thing, so I didn't always do it. And I'm sure my teacher knew, even though I was pretty good at sight reading, so I could come in and be like, pretty good, right? And my teacher would be like, yeah,
Wait,
just
wait.
marginally very similar to last week, but it was
No
enough for
progression,
me.
no progression.
I was like, just imagine if I got if I spent time, if I put energy into it, that how good I could be. That was enough for me, just the imagination of how good I could be. But then when I was about 15, a friend of mine from summer camp played the guitar, and we were hanging out, and he was in the bathroom, and I just started plucking away at his guitar, not having ever played a guitar, but because of my, knowledge of the stringed instrument, the violin, I was able to figure a few things out. And then because my mom was a music teacher, she had tons of books of music of all kinds, Broadway, popular stuff, like all classical, anything. And so I just went through and I found in the piano music she had guitar, like the tablature, that you can learn where to put your fingers, like just by looking at an image of basically the guitar. And you're like, okay. So I learned how to play. The first song I learned on the guitar was I Will Survive, because I could put all my fingers in the right places. And then I started teaching myself, like, just play. I didn't take any guitar lessons really at all, but I had enough crossover knowledge from the violin that I was able to just have a lot of fun. And I played for hours a day, and which I would have called practicing if I
Yeah.
was made to do it. But I loved it, and I started writing my own songs and playing them with my friends at camp. And I had a little duo with a good friend of mine, and we recorded some. And then I got to college, and I played in our coffee shop. And then I was just in senior year of college. I turned 21, and that was the first year that I was like, okay, I can get into bars. So I started really more hardcore pursuing where can I play my music. I was an
Yeah.
aspiring singer-songwriter. I was writing songs, I was singing them. And I found, among other places, I found some music open mics and some, empty bars I could play, into the ether in. And eventually I found a place called the Comedy Studio. I called them, and this is probably like, late 1999. I had just turned 21, and I
Wow.
said, "Can I come to your venue and play some of my songs, which are fun?" I was like, "Some of my songs are funny." I honestly didn't know what a comedy club. I think I'd been to one comedy club in my life. I went to Caroline's on Broadway the night of my prom, my senior prom. We went after the
Wow.
prom, like the school bussed us in, like as a, how schools will do things to make their kids not, be alone together and get naked. So they're like, the night keeps going. You keep
Comedy
having
club.
fun with your clothes on, and I've since performed on those shows, those after prom shows, and it's such an interesting energy. But
Such
that
a
so
full
that
circle moment, I'm sure too.
yeah. And earlier in my life, I had been to one comedy show like in I think the Catskills at a resort with my parents, and we actually saw Henny Youngman perform, who I had heard of. He's the most famous. He's like, he's dead now. He was probably active in the, I want to say, 30s, 40s. Like I saw him when I was a
Wow.
child. It must have been the late 80s or early 90s. And so he would probably have also been in his 80s or 90s. And his most popular phrase is he would say something like, women are ridiculous. Take my wife, please. And
I'm
so
begging you.
yeah, have you heard "take my wife, please" as a phrase before? Like that's
Got it. Got it.
originated with him in a way that I never even understood the joke was supposed to be like "take my wife," for example. But then he's like,
Sure.
"Take my wife, I don't want her anymore. Get her away from me."
Sure.
But I was just
Yeah.
like any joke, like, I remember learning why did the chicken cross the road to get to the other side, and I didn't understand that it had any kind of greater meaning than like, yeah, of course, yeah, that's just a call and response. It's like a song that you learn when you're a kid, like the
What is
first
the
jokes.
deeper meaning to the chicken going to the other side, Myq Kaplan?
Okay, well, two answers. Number one, some people have purported that it could be about the other side, like death, like
Death.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
so the other
Okay.
side of life. But even without that, the
It could,
deeper,
is the chicken unaliving itself?
it's unclear. I mean, I do recommend. I don't know if you saw Bo Burnham's Inside special, but
No.
there's I love Bo Burnham, and there's an outtake. He did a whole hour, so the special is like an hour, and they did an hour of the Inside outtakes, and one of them is just a song called "The Chicken," and
Oh,
it's one of the
God.
most beautiful songs I've ever heard. I really recommend it. It sort of speaks to this, but let me tell you this joke to
Sure.
help get at the answer to your
Please.
question of
Please.
what I mean by the deeper meaning. Uh, do you know what the farmer said when he couldn't find his tractor?
Where's my track?
That's right. That's 100% correct. And so why did the chicken cross the road to get to the other side? And that farmer tractor joke, those are both kind of like anti-jokes. Those are because the thing about a very simple, a reductive way to describe comedy is that part of it is there's a surprise, right?
Mhm,
That
mhm.
the punchline is surprising. So that when someone says, "Why did the chicken cross the road?" You're when that joke first dropped, or when the farmer joke first dropped, people would say what or why, because they're like, what is the surprise going to be? And the surprise of the anti-joke is that there is no surprise.
Got
And
it.
that
Got it.
is surprising because you expect there to be a surprise. So when you expect there to be a surprise and there's no surprise, there was no surprise. But as a child, I did not yet have enough, meticulous, calculating, efforts in my mind I was just like, oh, yeah, I guess that's, or like, here's another one. Did you ever heard this one? Like do you want to hear a dirty joke?
Sure.
A pig fell in the mud. Now, do you want to hear a clean joke?
That's something
Yeah,
my grandfather would say,
exactly. And so then so I heard that when I was a kid, and then
but
the
like in a
following line
Donald
is,
Duck
yeah.
voice.
Like, so do you want to hear a clean joke? He took a bath. And so that's
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the joke. When I first heard that joke, and the whole joke is obviously like, do you want to hear a dirty joke with pig fall in the mud, etc. I did not know what a dirty joke was. I did not know that there was a double meaning for dirty joke. I didn't know a dirty joke meant a joke with swears in it or with adult content or
Sure.
about sex or whatever.
Like
All
when
I
they
knew
say blue comedy.
exactly. I thought, oh yeah, it's about the sky. Whatever you got. So when I first heard, do you want to hear a dirty joke? A pig fell in the mud. From that point on, I was like, I guess a dirty joke just means someone or something gets dirty, gets
dirty.
physically muddy in the joke. And so similarly, why did the chicken cross the road? Like, did not register to me on any other level
Does
than
not compute.
literal.
Does
Yeah,
not
just,
compute.
yeah, just like, I mean, yeah, thank you. You asked a question, you answered the question. It all makes sense. And so this is to say, when I first saw Henny Youngman, when I was 8, 10, whatever I was, I also did not understand. Because adults had been like, he's the take my wife please guy. And so I already knew that's the punchline, but I didn't even know the setup or that there was a setup. Anyway, so comedy's very, very delicate. And I knew nothing about it until, so that was my first comedy experience that I didn't really take. And then in college, I saw a comedian came to my school named DJ Hazard, and he was the first comedian that I ever saw live that really like got me. Like, let me go back a little further. When I was 13, 1991, I saw Paul Reiser's comedy special, which is called 3.5 Blocks from Home. And it is one of the funniest comedy specials I've ever seen. It was certainly the first comedy special I remember ever seeing. And I loved it so much, even though he is a grown man. You might know him. He then was on the sitcom Mad About You. He's also now been an actor in movies like Whiplash. And
I remember Mad About You.
Yeah. So Mad About You is it's funny. My girlfriend and I are like working our way through it. Now we got the DVD set of the whole series. It's good. And his comedy, I mean, Mad About You is all about, marital bliss / non-bliss. And that's what his comedy was about. I bought his book, Couplehood, and read it and loved it. That's what it's all about. A grown man in a marriage. And not really, I was like 13 years old, had never been on a date, kissed a girl, I was just like barely, pubescent. And I was like, this man, it made me laugh so much. Even though I didn't relate to any of it, really. Yeah. But then I saw DJ Hazard when I was in college, and I related to it, and it like touched me and made me laugh in ways that I like didn't understand possible. I'd laughed with my friends, and this like captured some of that, but it was like, hyped up, like really like just like the way that, McDonald's makes their fries with some chemicals that like addict your brain. I'm like, this guy had been doing comedy for probably 20 years or more or thereabouts, and his sense of humor was my taste. I was like, how did he and even then I wasn't like, I want to be a comedian, but also at the end of his set, he did like an hour, and the end was like 15 minutes of songs, like some really short songs, it was all comedic songs, and he was like the nicest man. And then I would go to see him. So around this time is when I called the comedy studio and I said, can I come and play my funny songs? And they said that I could come and have 5 minutes. And I was like, well, can't play that many songs, but I'll shorten them as much as I can and play one or two. And so then between like 1999 and 2002, I was mostly I was finishing college. I started grad school. I was living at Boston University as a resident assistant while I was getting my master's in linguistics. I mostly wanted to just, perform. I was still just trying to become a professional, musician. And the comedy studio was one place that let me perform there, like maybe like twice a year, 3 times a year, maybe only one, like, because at that point the owner knew that I was like a tourist, a hobbyist, not a serious aspirational open mic comedian even. And so I would perform there whenever I could. And I would always bring like a bunch of friends, and that was probably why he would keep letting me come back.
Of course.
But along in those 3 years where I was, sort of in the, when you're born, like when does life start? Like when you're born, certainly you're alive then. And obviously you're conceived 9 months before you're born on average. And so this was like my comedy conception period. I feel like my comedy career was conceived in 1999 when I first performed at the comedy studio, really just trying to do music. In between the songs, I would talk. And before the song, like when I wasn't playing, I would talk and people would laugh a little bit. And that was new and surprising to me. As surprising as somebody else making me laugh, me making other people laugh was such a joy and a surprise, because it wasn't what I was trying to do.
Of
And
course.
so
And at least it didn't throw
yeah.
you off in a bad way. Because can you imagine you're doing something and then like they laugh and you're like, not what I wanted.
Oh, yeah, I mean, and that's the beauty of comedy is like either on stage or in life. If something happens that you don't like, then you're, you know, one split second away from being, if somebody's laughing at you, just switch and be where they are. And then they're laughing with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like,
Before I forget,
Yes, please.
you unlocked a memory, and I think because you've been on Keith and the Girl so many times over the years, and you reminded me that you do the music, and there's this core memory that's like uncredited in my brain, and now suddenly I was like, aha, is this a Myq Kaplan or one of your friends? Is Dr. Xiao Xiao yours?
it is. That is.
Do you know
yeah.
that my mother sings that because I sing it so much? Oh, hi, Mom. This is the
Oh.
originator of Dr. Xiao Xiao that to this
That's-
day I still sing.
Delightful. Yeah, that was myself and Micah Sherman. That was when
Yes,
Micah
yes,
and
it's
I,
Mike and Micah.
yeah, we met in probably 2005 in Boston when we were both individually pursuing stand-up and then started writing songs together. And
Can you please give me a rendition of Dr. Xiao
Oh,
Xiao?
sure. I mean, I'll also, you know, I will, and I'll point you to like the internet. I'll send you a link and you can share the full song as you wish, or certainly share it with yourself, share it with your mom as you like. But yeah, it's basically Micah was struggling with depression at the time. And
Look at us.
so-
And then over here.
and so we were you know, like I was just saying, there are things that can happen to
Which
you in
I
life.
have. I
Yeah.
have like a lot. And like I still, you know, I'm doing really well now, but like that's probably why it spoke to me so much. Please keep going.
Of course, of course. And so we were, you know, we were having fun coming up with song ideas, and he was talking about how sometimes he's so depressed that he can't get out of bed, and it's even just an accomplishment that he has to try to talk himself into like doing
Yes.
basic human things. And so
Yes.
we created this as kind of like a hype song for Micah and anybody else who could need it, to even like if you're bummed out and can't get out of bed, but you haven't, you know, bathed in days, you're like, okay, all you want to do, if you just want to take a shower. And so that's why we came up with the lyrics, it's time for Dr. Xiao Xiao to take a showy
a
show.
showy
And
show.
that's, yeah. And I mean, then a few other verses of like, you know, going
But
to check
that's-
your mail and yeah.
So this is a song that helps Micah and anyone else just motivate himself and yourselves to do your daily activities that you any day. Just sing yourself through this.
Please enjoy.
1, 2, 3.
It's time for Dr. Xiao Xiao to take a showy show. It's time for Dr. Xiao Xiao to take a showy show.
To wash his feet, his walking meat, to wash his toes before fungus grows.
It's time for Dr. Xiao Xiao to take a showy show.
So that's taking a shower. They can work for any everyday activity.
2, 3, 4. It's time for Dr. Mailbox to walk to the box of mail. It's time for Dr. Mailbox to walk to the box of mail. It is stuffed to the gills of bills, 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 and a red envelope.
Oh,
There's no hope. Great job, Dr. Mailbox. You walk to the box of mail. Always call yourself doctor.
Absolutely, it makes you sound important.
Always in the third person.
Absolutely, like you have friends that are counting on you.
Dr. Xiao Xiao to the mailbox. Stat!
Shower with all the mail and get it wet. Stat!
It works with any daily activity. 2, 3, 4. It's time for Doctor Don't Kill Yourself to stop crying into his cereal. It's time for Doctor Don't Kill Yourself to get off the bathroom floor. It's time for Doctor Don't Kill Yourself to stop eating cereal in the bathroom. It's time for Doctor Don't Kill Yourself to stop calling sleeping pills cereal.
So yeah, that was that was a delight. So I do still that we're a couple years ahead, but let's see. Let's get back to
But oh my God, I'm just so
oh, yeah.
glad that like my stoner brain was right.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love that as well. Like sometimes you guess something and you're like, why do I think it's that?
Yeah.
Why would I think that if it wasn't that? It is that. I'm happy for that reveal as well. Thank you so
But
much.
I love that like so many times I've sang it to myself, I've sang it to my dog, I sang it to my mom. My mom sings it now. It's time for Dr. Xiao Xiao to take a showy show.
that
Da, da, da. But and then like we come up with like whatever that comes next.
Oh, that's incredible. I'm gonna tell Micah right after we
Oh
get
my
off. It's like it's so meaningful. Because obviously, you if you create something and then you put it into the world, and for a while we were performing it regularly, and then we recorded it, and now he lives in LA and I live in New York, so we don't get together and perform frequently, if at all these days. And so that song lives, online and then in the minds and hearts of
Me
beautiful
and my
folks
mom.
like you. Yeah, at least. Thank you. What is your mom's name?
Lavon.
Lavon. Love it. Okay. So this is all to say, so between 1999 and 2002, I would mainly perform at music venues, but at the Comedy Studio once in a while. Oh yeah, and when people ask me, because I was only trying to be a musician and wasn't trying to be a comedian, when people laughed, it was this weird, fun bonus. So when people ask me questions like, when did you know that you wanted to do comedy? The truthful answer is right after, like shortly after I started doing comedy. Shortly after I
Sure.
was already doing it, unbeknownst to me, is when I was like, oh, that was fun. Now let me try to perpetuate that. So I think so that answers half of your question, and the other half, so that's how I got into it and what it was like at the time. I was in Boston. I started grad school in 2000, and I count the beginning of my comedy career as like 2002.
Okay.
That's like the time that I pursued other open mics and other venues, and I was like, oh, I can go do comedy
So
wherever.
2002, so it's been 23 years, if
Yeah,
my
this
math is
year will be
correct.
23 years.
Numbers are
Absolutely.
things. Wow.
Yes,
Okay.
100%. And so in Boston at the time, let me zoom out in the greater, in the world of stand-up comedy. Like stand-up comedy is one of the, in its modern form, like newest art forms, and like it exists all over the world, but they're in the United States, like jazz. I feel like it originated in like the vaudeville era more. Like there's always been storytelling, of course. There's always
Sure.
been comedy of kinds like, commedia
But like
dell'arte
the
and
structure
clowning.
of the pa-ra-ta-ta-ta-ta-pa-pa.
Yeah, the beautiful song describing how comedy works. Yeah, and back in vaudeville, like I have a friend, actually my first musical partner, my good friend Sam, works in theater, and he was telling me he was working on a vaudeville show once, like a modern, rendition of, but there was like characters that could have been like telling these jokes in the 1920s and not, 100 years later. And so like a joke, like what two guys, with canes and top hats, and like one of them's like, hey, what did 0 say to 8? And it's like, I don't know, what did 0 say to 8? And he's like, nice belt, and so things like, like one-liners, like jokes that were at the time, like not necessarily about people's lives. Like even Henny Youngman's joke about his wife, that's not, maybe he had an unhappy marriage, but that's not really about his internal personal experience in the way that like, a Mark Maron or a Maria Bamford would present.
They are
today.
very much driving from their personal experience.
Like when Tig goes on stage and says, I have cancer, it's because she has cancer.
Cancer,
And when Henny Youngman says, take my wife, please, it's because he's a vaudeville performer, and anyone could have told that joke, but he's the one who came up with it. And so this is all to say, then I'd say in the 50s-ish, I think Mort Saul is like, sort of thought of as maybe one of the first more modern comedians who like talked about current events. You know, he would sit on the stage with a newspaper, and then obviously like people like Carlin and Lenny Bruce, and then Robert Klein would be like sort of some of the first more observational comedians that like Seinfeld would like stand on the shoulders of and look up to, and then obviously, Richard Pryor, of course, and by that point people are getting more personal and talking, doing like nobody could do Richard Pryor's material but for Richard Pryor, and hopefully the same for everyone. Like maybe even Phyllis Diller, nobody could do her stuff if not, and that's the goal of any comedian, is to become so uniquely yourself that like you and your material potentially eventually. Okay, everybody back. I'm gonna focus myself. Okay,
now
so
let's zoom back in.
Yes. So I would say the 70s is like when maybe when the first comedy clubs started to like pop up and propagate, like only like a couple in LA and a couple in New York. And then the 80s, there was the first real modern stand-up comedy boom.
Yes.
Where not only like,
where you had the chuckle huts and the ha-has and the funny spots everywhere.
Exactly. And then not even just comedy, like, yes, comedy venues abound, like thousands around the country. And then every bowling alley and restaurant and any place that had a room where you could put a microphone, like it was so popular, so hot. And then, so that happened all through the 80s into the early 90s. TV shows like Caroline's Comedy Hour and An Evening at the Improv, like comedy clubs would just film some of their shows and be like, now it's TV, and it would.
And they were getting lots of deals too, right? Like lots of comedians were just getting deals for like sitcoms and stuff like that.
Absolutely. The Seinfeld and Paul Reiser and Roseanne and Brett Butler
Caroline.
and Tim Allen. Yes, Caroline Ray. Like all of these people who were, had strong stand-up acts in the 80s. Like, often they would go on Carson and maybe your set is like a 5-minute, Tim Allen was doing 5 minutes about, men grunting and not understanding women. And then he has a TV show where
he goes
exactly. And now he has his third or fourth TV show where perhaps he grunts in a different tone, whatever it is. And so, so that was like the model, that was like the like what going viral is today. Like in today's world, you're like, oh man, like Matt Rife today, like a few years ago, Matt Rife posts a video of a crowd work interaction and millions of people see it and share it, and the algorithm now is his friend, and he has a massive career where he's touring, many thousand seat theaters, selling them out. And that dream, that is the weird dream of today. Whereas a few years ago, to become the TikTok star, a few years ago at some point it was on Twitter, like Rob Delaney was a guy who like really took off on Twitter and has a wonderful career in acting and writing and comedy today because in part because he wrote jokes on Twitter and they got very popular. And Bo Burnham,
Jesus and Mero basically blew up because of a Twitter. Yeah,
exactly. And so those things can convert to either TV shows or movies or career or whatever shape you want your career or touring. And
gigs.
So when I was starting, it was like Dane Cook on MySpace, like wow, he's doing something different. And so going back then to in the 90s, it was like, or in the 80s, it was like
back in the 1900s.
Last millennium. Like, I mean, the dream of many comedians in the 80s was to get on Johnny Carson, do 5 minutes, have Johnny like it, call you over to the couch. And I started in Boston, where there's this movie called When Stand-Up Stood Out that documents the Boston scene from the early 80s-ish. And it involves, like, at the time, Stephen Wright was, before he was known, he was an unknown. And I think his name was Peter LaSalle, was a guy who worked for The Tonight Show, and he came to Boston with his son who was looking at colleges. And while he was in town, he was like, I'll go to the Ding Ho, which was a Chinese restaurant that had that was also like a full-time comedy club at the time, that I believe Barry Crimmins, rest in peace, an amazing comedian, started, a lovely human being, a hilarious comedian. And the Ding Ho put on a showcase where they'd show, like, maybe it was like Dennis Leary and Lenny Clark and whoever the biggest Boston guns of comedy. And Stephen Wright was on the show, and he was like not as far along in his career, like chronologically yet, but I understood he was the one person who like didn't mob the guy after the show, and he was just, you know, kept to himself, and then got a call and was like, "You're doing the Tonight Show," and he did it the next week, and then maybe came on 3 weeks later, and then, you know, recorded an album, and I think it may have won a Grammy, and then it certainly was nominated, and then he went on to, I think, make an Academy Award-winning short film, and also appeared on Mad About You, full circle there, at one point. And so, you know, he became
That, as in the biz, they like to say a callback.
yeah. And so Steve, like, I feel like Stephen Wright was like the epitome of the dream in the 80s. Like, nobody knows who you are. Somebody from Carson sees you, then you're on the Tonight Show, and then everybody knows who you are for decades.
Yeah.
So that all, then, you know, they kept making these shows and kept, you know, trying to, you know, capitalism the crap out of comedy. And eventually the bubble burst in the 90s. And like, I think I read at some point there was like maybe between 2,000 and 3,000 clubs, and maybe 1 to 2/3 of them closed, something like that. And so, because it became like it was a job choice you could make. Be like, what do you want to do? You want to be an accountant, or you want to be a comedian? You could just have 15 minutes and tour as a host and make, you know, even if you're making just a couple $100 a night, if there's shows every night, you know, that's a fine living. And so that was the 90s. And I remember Gary Goldman, one of who I'm grateful to call a friend now, and at the time when I started was like a guy who had come from Boston and he was sort of at the very he got maybe one of the last development deals, which is like how all of like Seinfeld and Mad About You came into being. Was like, they're like, all right, you comedian,
you get a deal,
you get a deal,
you get a deal.
Yeah, the Oprah model, of course.
Yeah.
And so I remember like seeing Gary and being like, oh wow, like, and he had, you know, come up watching the generation before him. And so I grew up watching him, and basically by this point I feel like there's like a newer boom now. And for anyone who's like more interested in more nitty gritty, I read this book in the past year by Jesse David Fox called Comedy Book, and I had him on my podcast to talk about it. And it's basically about how comedy has taken over the culture in the past 30 years, from like the beginning of like Seinfeld and The Simpsons, like through now. And there's like tons of stuff about stand-up and more than stand-up. But yeah, so I'm there. So now in the early 2000s, it's 2002, and I don't know any of what I just said. I only know Henny Youngman. I only know Paul Reiser's first special, which I didn't even watch again until 30 years later, and it still holds up. I super recommend it. And he's got a new one out that just came out last year as well that I'm super excited to see. And so yeah, I knew those two. And I knew Saturday Night Live, and I knew Seinfeld. I knew anybody who was famous for TV or movies who also
mainstream.
Yeah. And I honestly didn't know that they got their start in stand-up. I thought like, oh, you get to be famous and then you can do stand-up if you want. But so there I was, like only just learning. Like like on that subject, I did not know that there were unfamous comedians. Because to me, it's a sample size problem. Like I only knew a comedian if they were famous. Like I went to Caroline's after my prom, and there were comedians who weren't famous there, but I don't remember who they were. It didn't make it didn't compute with me. I saw Anthony Clark, who I knew was a famous person from TV, in like the lobby, but he wasn't even on the show. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's comedy, a famous person. But when I saw DJ Hazard in 1999 or so at my college, I was like, oh, like, I don't know what this is, but it's beautiful. And then when I was on stage at a comedy club trying to do music, I was like, oh, this is that also from the other side. And so then I just tried to find anywhere that I could to perform. And in Boston at the time, like it's like in any major city, like there's probably a comedy club, if not multiple comedy clubs, depending how big the city is. And then there's probably, if there are comedy clubs, there are non-comedy venues like bars that have a comedy night or open mics, or, you know, a music venue that, you know, sometimes does comedy. And so then I just started, I don't know how I learned. It must have been at the Comedy Studio, somebody else is like, "Hey, have you ever been to the Vault?" And I was like, "What's the
Mm.
Vault?" And it was Dick Doherty's Beantown Comedy Vault, and that was
Wait, that name.
yeah. Yeah, and even more. So Dick Doherty was a real human being who died a couple years ago, around age 80, or maybe between 70 and 80. And but he was also instrumental in the beginning of my career because he had been doing entertaining like music and comedy since like the 60s or 70s, and
Wow.
he throughout my my tenure in Boston, which from I moved to New York in 2008, so anything from when I started until 2008, I worked for him at Dick Doherty's Beantown Comedy Vault and Dick Doherty's Comedy Escape in maybe Worcester, and he had a room in New Hampshire, and then he opened one in downtown in the financial district, and he just kept opening rooms here
Was
and there.
that one the bank? The Vault Escape?
No, that's a great question. No, but I mean, the Vault was so named because it used to be a bank. It was like the green
I
room.
wasn't too far
Yeah,
off.
you 100%. It was a vault. Like there was the vault door was still there in the room.
That's cool.
It was very cool. There's actually now, so that place is no longer a comedy venue, but in Batavia, Illinois, just outside Chicago, there's another venue called the Comedy Vault that also used to be a bank. So
Wow.
if you need a venue to exist that used to be a bank,
With a
you
vault.
got it. Yeah, keep it in the vault. And so let's take a poll. That's a vault poll as opposed to a pole vault. So I went to Dick Doherty's Beantown Comedy Vault Sunday night open mic, which was a 2-person bringer show, which if you're not familiar, a bringer show, like a true open mic is like anyone can sign up. Like it'll be like, it starts at 7, show up at 6, put your name on the list. Or if too many people show up, put your name in a hat. And it's just, an equal opportunity thing. And then
Yes.
bringer shows are you sign up in advance and promise to bring 2 paying audience members. And I think at the time they had to pay $7 each and, maybe buy a drink or 2. And then
Exactly.
the benefit is, 2 people's not a ton. I mean, it's a little bit exploitative of young aspiring comedians, but 2 people compared to, there's places in New York that ask for 5, 10, 15, 20, like keep go, like I've heard of 20-person bringer
They
shows.
expect you to bring 20
It's-
people to a
it re-
show?
It's really just, I mean,
Aren't
at
you
that
just
point,
a headliner at that point?
I mean, that is a great point because eventually in your career, like here's how the career hopefully works. Like for me, I started doing that bringer show every Sunday. I would bring a couple friends. Then maybe one time I could only bring one friend, and like that's okay. And then when I couldn't bring any friends, I squeezed all the juice out of my friendships. Who are coming to see me when I'm the worst I'll ever be. At that point, then the person who worked like producing the show said to me, "Do you want to work the door?" And then I would start working the door. And so that's another way you could get stage time. Like in New York, there's barkers, like just people on the street being like, "You want to come to this comedy show?" And
Comedy,
sometimes-
comedy. You like comedy. You like comedy. I like comedy.
Exactly. And so you get people to the show, and then you get a 5-minute spot on the show or whatever. And so for me, I would help set up the chairs, I would take the tickets, and then I would get a spot on that show on that Friday or Saturday night. And then I'd also get to do a free spot on the open mic. So that was, and then I just found out where the true open mics were. Like there was a bar called the Emerald Isle that just every Wednesday, there weren't always audience members, but there was always a bunch of comedians hanging out. And so that's one of the places that I first met Micah Sherman and Shane Moss and like, Joe List. And like there was all these bars all over Boston that had shows and a few different comedy venues, some improv theaters, a place called Improv Boston and the Improv Asylum. And some of them would have like stand-up nights or nights where you could, do whatever. And so that is what it was like at the time. And the way it comes full circle is eventually, you hopefully work your way up that you don't have to bring people anymore. You don't have to bark anymore. You don't have to, work or quote unquote sing for your supper, in a way, sing a song that you don't want to, so you can sing the song that you do want to.
Yes.
And eventually, you get to hopefully, you develop your own audience, like today, obviously, even more so than in the past. You can have a mailing list, you can have people following you on social media, and then you can book a gig, and then hopefully, like wherever it is, if you have people that'll come out to see you, when you're a touring headliner, like Kevin Hart can sell out Madison Square Garden because he has become it's the ultimate bringer show. Like that is like be having a draw, having a fan base is, the positive flip side of like, you're not calling them all on the phone, be like, I really need you to be there or else it's going to be
Yes.
trouble. But I also do see some friends every once in a while online being like, hey, please come to the show or it might not happen. And I've had that happen as well, where, sometimes you need a certain number of people to get you the gig or to keep you the gig or to get you the next, maybe they'll give you one on spec and be like, we hope that people will show up. And then if they don't show up, then maybe you don't get to come back until you can prove that, oh no, people come to see me now. So that's what it was. So in a way, when I said it was the same when I started as it is now, it kind of, different buildings, different comedians, different faces, but the basics are, you start performing, you start writing, you get on stage, you review your sets, you edit, you keep doing it, and you hopefully, you keep, my girlfriend Rini and I, there's this video we love of this little kid who's learning how to ride a bike, and his parent is like, anything you want to tell to the people? And the kid's like, just keep practicing. I believe if you keep practicing, then eventually you can ride a bike. And we're just like, with anything, just keep, like, we just started taking an acting class. We're like, if we just keep practicing, and like, there's no really understanding how improvement, it's like muscle, like you lift a bunch of weights and then you can lift more weights, exactly. Look at those muscles right there. And so you work the comedy muscles and, listen to, and do that as a human being as well. And look within and, work out the muscle of being yourself, of your heart and your spirit.
Oh, that's perfect because I have a new production manager that I'm working with, and he's actually an up and coming comedian in the scene. And, he's struggled a bit over the years. And to me, like, I have a theory that if you're struggling, you're not going to be like a happy person. But I see in him a very kind, funny, sweet guy that just needs a chance, right? And so I gave him the chance, start working with me. We've been working for a bit. And I've been mentoring him, how to just move in the scene that, like, okay, you're not going to get along with everybody, but just, you're better off just being quiet and minding your business than like being an asshole, because people remember an asshole and people don't like to work with an asshole. And I was like, look at Adam Sandler. Adam Sandler hires all his friends for all his gigs because you know what? It's less about and it's not that it's less about the talent, but I call it the 80-20. That to me, it's 80 about the relationships and 20 about the talent at the end of the day. If you want longevity and you are somebody that has had longevity, what do you think about my 80-20 theory?
Oh, I love it. I couldn't, I would love to see an empirical study demonstrating the exact numbers of it. I love numbers. But for sure, like the thing that it reminds me of, I agree with you. I agree with your 80-20, 100%. Add those 80 and 20. Yeah. You get me. There's a thing I've heard about how, like, in show business, there's three things. You gotta show up on time, you gotta be talented, and you gotta be kind to people. And the secret is you only have to do two of those. Like, if you show up on time and you're kind, people might still want to work with you, even if you're not as talented. Or if you're super talented and super kind, then you can show up a little late and they'll be like, I forgive you. And if you're super talented and you show up unkind, you can be an asshole and you'll still get work. But like, you definitely can't just be an asshole.
Yeah. No, okay, thank you. And Seamus, I'm not saying that you're an asshole, but
That's a great point. That you make that. I'm sorry to interrupt you to tell you what a great point you're making, but
please tell me some more.
Like that, I think that people will remember an asshole more than they will remember a kind. Like, be extra kind and go out of the way. People might not even believe that you're real. Like, that's like when I first met Josh Gondelman, I was like, how come this guy for real? He is? Oh, great. That's nice. He's so nice. I'm not nice. Oh, I'm the asshole. Oh, never mind. But humans have a negativity bias because it serves us evolutionarily. Like, if something's poisonous, you eat it once, you die. You see your friend eat something poisonous once, you stay away from that. So one toxic person, one poisonous, blow up, like, even, do your best. Like, we're human. We're all working with what we can.
Of course.
Yeah.
We're all human at the end of the day. but it's just people remember who you are on the way up and people remember who you are on the way down. And there's a little bit of up and down. And so because I have a lot of friends in the drag scene. I do drag once in a blue moon. To me, there's a lot of crossover with drag and comedy. And yeah, it really goes that time asshole talented, very much full circle Venn diagram with drag. And yeah, it's just over the years I've seen the ones that are assholes but super super talented and so they get booked for that. I would never want to book them for my show. And when I think about the people that I do want to book for my show, I want to be those people and I want to be like those people. Speaking of booking people for a show, if I may do a quick plug
Yeah.
for a couple of things. First of all, I want to float this idea by you and see how you react. See how the beeps and the bops maybe boop in your head. So, obviously, you know about roasts as a concept, nothing new. And Keith Malley, our sweet dear friend for both of us, asked me many moons ago if I would ever do a roast because in drag, there's also drag roasts. And I said, hell no, I don't have a thick enough skin. But then I started playing around with this idea with my drag friends, half jokingly. I was like, well, what if we do like a nice roast? We call it a bake and we say nice things, but like in a mean way. And enough people giggled at me. So that's going to be my next live show coming to you in August. I'm this close to signing the paperwork with the venue, but I'm booking people and I'm booking a proper cast. I'm going to get, I love getting merch. I love the illustrations. I love all that. So I'm already like working with the concept for the illustration, for the flyer, for the t-shirts, for the this, for the that. So please keep an eye out for MeMeCherry's Big Bake. It's going to be drag and comedy brought together. And at the end of the night, we will have the bake of MeMeCherry. I already started working on my material. My cast is almost fully booked. So I can't wait to start letting people know who is part of the cast. But first I want to lock in that venue. And while we're talking about this, how do I produce this show? Because I produce it. I'm the producer. Part of that is with your help because MeMeCherry Productions has a Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/MeMeCherry Productions, you can join. 3 tiers. The first tier that you can join is a sweet little deal that I call the honey tier. For $3 a month, you can get the hot cam access, what used to be editing room floor footage that used to stay on my little computer in the corner in that little trash box. Now I put it together, I make it cute, and you get to see it on Patreon. You also get access to the SOFE Vault, older episodes. Way back when I first started, it was a baby little podcast. Those episodes are slowly being put away in the vault, very Disney style. So capture and see the vault as it grows. Production credit. You're going to be able to see your name and lights on the show. Other exclusive behind the scene content and monthly happy mail. You get a little note in the mail and you get a sticker. These are some of these stickers. Well, no, these are more like the stickers that you get in the mail. But you get stickers in the mail from me every month. You get one sticker in the mail every month for $3 a month as a part of the honey tier. Now, let's say you want to give me maybe $6 a month. Make it a little sweeter. You can be part of the sugar tier. You get everything from the honey level, the hot cam, the vault access, the production credit, the behind the scenes. You get the monthly mail, but you get 2 stickers in the mail. Can you believe that, Mike?
It's hard to believe, but I think I can.
It's so hard to believe. But now, let's say, Mimi, I want to be the nicest I can be to you. I want to make it so sweet that it turns into caramel. You can be a part of the caramel tier, the ultimate Sophie VIP treatment, because you want the top tier experience. You're going to get everything from the previous tiers. You're going to get the hot cam. You're going to get the vault access. You're going to get the production credit. You're going to get the monthly mail with 2 stickers in the mail and a little note that I write. It's like Christmas or Valentine's or I don't know, another holiday, but every month in the mail. But you will also get every 6 months a t-shirt in the mail that I wish I had in my hands, but I don't have it right now. But I'm editing it in right now. Enjoy this edit. But I'm actually getting ready to send out the first batch of t-shirts and they're limited. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm very passionate about merch. I love illustrations. I'm an artist myself, a budding artist, but I love collaborating with artists. And so very vault style, like the Disney. The t-shirts are also kind of vault style. They're limited drops. So the shirts that are going out next month, they will not be available anymore. But you know what will be available? New shirts that you can get if you sign up to the caramel tier of the Patreon. Thank you very much for putting up with my pitch, Myq Kaplan.
It was delightful to enjoy. I took a little break, and it was fun. Those are fantastic. I appreciate it.
Yay, 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 yay. Oh, and before I forget, another reason why you should support the Patreon is that through the Patreon, I am spreading the wealth now more than ever in this economy. I want to take care of everybody around me. My production manager, I take care of him. I value his time. My guests, I don't know if you noticed, Myq Kaplan, but you got a little something in the memo earlier today.
I will tell you this. I got it earlier today, and because we've been communicating with mainly the MeMeCherry name, it came from your government name and said, "Thank you for doing the podcast." And I was like, "Ooh, I did a podcast." And I started searching online and first came across the historical Cuban, did you say? The person from, I was like, I don't think I did a historical Cuban podcast. But then I located, I was like, aha, it's the podcast I am about to do. And I thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I vouch, everyone listening, I vouch for the veracity of the statements that are being made. I have been taken care of with your Patreon dollars.
Yes, 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 yes. And if you want to send me directly your mailing address, I'll also drop some little stickers in the mail for you. So thank you very much for listening to the Patreon pitch.
Yeah.
So if you're up for it, I mean, I have so many other questions, but I know that we have limited time. So you know what? Maybe you'll just come back and I'll ask you more questions that I have written down. But I do want to play some robot games because beep bop boop bop beep. If you
I
are
will
new,
say, yeah, before
Yeah.
we play the game or
Yeah.
however many games, I will say I will absolutely happily come back on the show and answer one question every time.
and we'll spend 45 minutes on one question.
Yes.
Perfect. I'll have you back so much. That's great. I love it. That'll give me an excuse to keep seeing your beep bop boop face.
Thank you.
So if you're new to the world of Myq Kaplan, you keep hearing me say beep bop boops. If you're not new to the Keith and the Girl world, there's been this running joke that Myq Kaplan is half robot, quarter robot, all robot. So we're gonna have a couple of robot games. Are you ready, Myq Kaplan, for Are You Smarter Than a Robot?
I am ready.
This is basically going to be a robot themed trivia game to test Mike's pop culture knowledge of his brethren.
Well, I guess we'll find it's kind of like a Turing test or a reverse Turing test, wherein if I don't get the questions right, that maybe will prove that I'm a human.
First up, some of them are going to be multiple choice. Some of them are just you answer the question. So
Okay.
first up, I have a multiple choice for you. Which robot famously said, "I'll be back"? Is it A?
I know that one. It's
Do you wanna
Arnold
just- you want- you-
Schwarzenegger.
You don't need the.
Yeah, and it's the Terminator.
Like, you don't even need the
Yeah.
options. Just straight to the answer. Beep beep.
Yeah.
Alex, I'm ready for my answer. Good job. Ding ding ding. You got it. All right. Next up on Are You Smarter Than a Robot? Myq Kaplan. Which Pixar movie features a lonely robot who collects trash?
Wall-E.
Very good job. Muy job. Muy bueno. Muy bueno. Beep bop boop bop beep. What is the name of the AI computer in 2001: A Space Odyssey that turns against the crew? I have options for you, or do you want to freeball it?
I have an idea, but I'll take the options this time.
You'll take your options. You have option number 1, HAL 9000. You have option number 2, Glad DOS. You have option number 3, Deep Thought. You have option numero 4, and last but not least, Skynet.
Oh, it's HAL 9000. Yeah.
It is HAL 9000, the eerily calm AI who famously says, "I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that."
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that sound is that like a fam is it on the family crest?
A great question. A great question. Um, yeah, no, I'm the other from the other side of the robot spectrum where
Got it. Got
I
it.
can do that, and I'm happy to be able to.
And I can and will.
Yeah.
Okay, so going further down your family tree, what's the name of your cousin, aka the Jetsons robotic maid?
Ooh, this is one that I might not have,
There's
because I.
also another image that's kind of famous of a lady kind of going like this, and they
Oh, is
share.
it Rosie?
Good job. Ding
Yeah.
ding ding. Beep bop bop bop, beep. Sorry. Beep bop bop beep. And then I have two more on Are You Smarter
Okay.
Than a Robot? Myq Kaplan. We have next up. Which real life company created the humanoid robot Sophia? So class to Sophie. Who once said that's what I call the podcast, Sophie, series of fortunate events. Sorry, got ADD brain. Beep bop boop bop beep. Let's start over. Which real life company created the humanoid robot Sophia, who once said she wanted to destroy humans?
This one, I feel like
I have options.
yes, I'll take options.
You'll take options. Option number 1, Boston Dynamics. Option number 2, Tesla AI. Option number 3, Hanson Robotics. Option number 4, Cyberdyne Systems.
This one I'm not sure at all, but I feel like I'm gonna go with number. What was the third one again?
Hanson Robotics.
I'll go with that one.
You were very good. Beep, bop, boop, bop, beep. Hanson Robotics. Sophia, the creepy humanoid robot, was developed by this Hong Kong-based company. Last but not
Wow.
least, and Are You Smarter Than a Robot? Beep, bop, boop, bop, beep. Which video game franchise features the robot dog Rush?
Oh, I am a person
Are we going to
who
break your streak here?
we might. So I am not of all the if you don't know me and you only know me for the past hour, you might think, do I play video games? Do I know
The
things
answer is
about video
no.
games? You might think yes, but the answer is I played too much when I was a child. So I kind of made an unofficial guideline for myself as an adult that I would never, like, not never, but I have not really purchased a gaming system.
This is a game that was around when we were younger, and you're
Oh,
within my
okay.
age range.
That sounds fair. Okay, so
I
tell me the
will say
question one more
that.
time. It may just be a game that I've
Robot
not
Dog
played.
Rush.
Robot Dog
People would be
Rush.
surprised to know that under this outfit, although if I'm not, it's interesting because the name would suggest otherwise, but if I'm not mistaken, my stoner brain sometimes do remembering things. If I'm not mistaken, under the outfit, she's actually a lady, but the name would suggest otherwise.
I
And now
mean,
I need to look it up. I'll have to look it up after we're done. Mega Man,
okay.
because if I'm not mistaken, that's
Ah,
part of the lore that underneath that helmet, she's actually a lady. But I need to go look that
wow.
up.
That's cool, and I would not have gotten it.
But yeah, she has like the arm kind of like boom, 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 and like the gun. Anyways,
Sure.
I am a gamer nerd. Okay, and round 2 of our
Oh.
robot games. Now, I really want to test your family tree knowledge.
Mhm.
I'm gonna give you a name, and you're gonna tell me, are they a robot or not?
I'm ready.
Okay. Dot Matrix.
Dot Matrix. Sounds like a robot. I'll say yes.
She's very real. She was the robot from Spaceballs voiced by Joan Rivers.
Okay.
What do we think about Zillbot 2000?
And so the question is, are these like either a robot or a series of
Or
words that you
or
made
something that
up?
I came up with. Yes.
Zillbot 2000, I've never heard of. I'll say nothing. You made it up.
Good job. Good job. 2 for 2. How do we feel about K9?
K, like the letter K and the number 9. That sounds like a robot.
It's real. The Doctor Who's robotic dog. 3
Yeah.
for 3. Myq Kaplan remembers his family tree. How do we feel about Ibo?
great question. First, I'll say you said 3 for 3. I remember my family tree, so I'd like to say tree for tree. And now,
Ayo.
Ibo, can you spell Ibo for me?
AIBO.
I have not heard of it, but I'll say it is real.
It is real, and I remember seeing them in person when there used to be a PlayStation store in San Francisco. Not PlayStation. I used to work at the PlayStation store next to the Sony store. At the Sony store, they had a tiny little robotic dog. It was called Ibo.
Cool.
Last but not least, on your family tree of beep bop boop bop beeps.
Yes.
What do we think about Neon 4G?
Neon 4G. This is another one that it definitely sounds like it could be something. I've never heard of it, so I'll say that you made it up.
You're so good. Good job. Good job. Good job. Beep bop boop bop beep.
I thank you for celebrating in the language of my people.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, before we finish the main show and go over to the Patreon, and again, you heard that Patreon pitch. Come on over. Some of this content is exclusivo to the Patreon, so come join the party. If you could program one function into yourself as a robot, what would it be?
Huh. That's an interesting question.
Beep bop boop bop beep.
If I could program one function into myself, what would it be? Do you have an answer of what you would do, or do you not?
know, I would.
There are so many things. I feel
Yeah,
like
I
I'm
know.
like,
It's so funny now that I think
what
about
about
it.
isming myself? You know, if I'm like, oh, I'd make it so
What about
that
this?
when
What about that? What about
whenever
this?
I was hungry, I would get to have an indicator of exactly. Oh, this is it. I'll say. I mean, I'm sure there could be other great answers, but to have, the way that a phone battery can tell you it's at 7% or 89%, to have like maybe a full array of batteries demonstrating, like a car or whatever, like, oh, this fluid is lacking, or we need a little more of this juice, or charging time. So like to know how much food I don't have in me, how much I need once it gets to the point where I'm, too much, overflowing for food, for water, if it can only be one for food, but otherwise like a whole, diagnostic system.
I like it. I like it. Very similar to in Zelda that you have your activity rings and your fitness rings and all that. So very similar.
Exactly.
I'm into it. I like this. I would program this. What is something you irrationally love that most people hate?
I don't know that most people, let's see, would hate. So here's some things that and I don't know that, it's interesting. I don't know that any of the things that I love, I would consider irrational. But that's probably, probably there are some things that I love that people hate. That's for sure. Like, but I love advice columns.
Beep, bop, boop, bop, beep.
Yeah. Do people hate advice columns? I don't know. I love comic books. A lot of people love comic books. Are there, I guess maybe, let's say cryptic crosswords. I mean, or difficult, puzzles of a certain difficulty. I could see, I love to a point, and many people do not.
I could see that. Mine is sleeping with my dog in my bed.
For sure. I get that.
What's the weirdest place you've ever performed stand-up?
I've performed stand-up in probably so many weird places that I don't keep track of what the weirdest one is, but here's one that popped into my mind right now.
If it was going to win you
Yeah.
$1 million to answer this question the best way possible, what is the weirdest place that you've ever performed stand-up, Myq Kaplan?
Okay,
For $1 million hairs.
Oh, wait a second. That's different. I don't know if I want those. The one that popped into my mind initially, and, I think the
Go with
answer
that
might
one.
be different if I gave myself more time. I performed stand-up at, do you know Marshmallow Fluff?
I know it as a
marshmallow-
concept.
Yeah. Like it's in a jar. You can put it, like it's made out of marshmallows, or now it's
Yeah.
not even made out of but like,
Of course.
like
It's a
famous-
gooey
like,
marshmallow, spreadable
Yeah.
marshmallow.
you could put it on like peanut butter sandwiches, or,
Sure.
and people call that fluffer nutter. So
The Elvis.
Yeah, I believe that. I think that one also has banana with
Yeah.
it as well. But yes, so I think it was in Somerville, Massachusetts, or somewhere around there, in the Boston area, that either the factory existed where fluff was first created, or fluff was conceived of, and
Oh.
I don't know if they did it more than this once, but at least one point, there was a fluff celebratory festival, and I performed
Oh.
at an outdoor festival celebrating
Fluff.
this gooey
The Fluff
condiment
Festival.
yeah, yes.
Oh my God, say that 3 times. The Fluff Festival.
Yeah.
Last but not least, before we wrap up this show, describe your comedy style in 3 emojis.
Oh, 3 emojis. Ooh boy. Okay. I'm gonna look at my emojis. 'Cause I'm not. Look, I am. So I'm gonna. Here's the emojis that. Okay. So, one. Yeah. Oh. Okay. Oh boy. Yeah. I think I got it. Because I just looked at. If you pull up your phone and you go into your emojis, it shows you your most used
Most
emojis.
used, yeah, of course.
So okay. Here are some of the choices that I'm gonna give you my I think this is the top 16 emojis, and then I'm gonna tell you which ones of those. These are our semifinalists, and then we'll get to our
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage.
our 3 winners. Okay, so we've got an infinity sign. We've got the paint palette. We've got a menorah. We've got a duck. We've got a rainbow. We've got a boxing glove. We've got one that I don't recognize and can't tell you what it is. But
mysterious emoji.
I have no idea how it's there.
Describe it.
It's kind of rectangular, but a little rounded across the top. It's got. I mean, I could show. No, I can't. It's too small. But I could put it to you in the. Hold on. I think I could put it. Nope, I can't. Because my phone's on airplane. Anyway, I'll text it to you later.
Yeah. I'll drop it in.
Okay. We've got a top hat. We've got clapping hands. We've got fire. We've got an owl with heart eyes. And we've got.
I think I know which one you used to flirt.
We've got guy shrugging, and we've got musical notes. And so here's the thing. And then we've got the final 3 that I haven't said, I think are our winners. Runners up include infinity sign and owl with heart eyes, along with musical notes. But musical notes could make it in. But okay, the 3 winners are heart.
Oh. Which color heart? Which color heart?
It's a red heart. Classic.
Iconic, classic red heart.
Yeah, classic red heart, but really any heart would do. Prayer hands or high five hands.
Okay.
And brain exploding.
Oh, because to me, the color of the heart matters. Because I sometimes send a purple heart. I sometimes send a green heart. Like it's like the hanky code, but of love.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, in reality, I do not think that my stand-up can be contained in 3 emojis only. But yeah, like if we got to zoom out further, we'd use all the heart colors and the musical notes and
the fire.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. But yeah, I'm happy with the ones that I've covered.
Your pageant of emojis is well received, and I like your winner.
Thank you.
We will send them off to Emoji College with their sponsorship. All right, you as in the listener, have reached the end of the main show. As I've teased, please come over to the Patreon to catch the little extended bonus. If you are listening to this in your audio ear holes and you listen to it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please leave a review. It helps a tiny glittery pirate ship like mine sail deeper in bluer seas. If you are on YouTube, we have a goal to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Please just hit subscribe. It's the easiest, most free thing you can do. If you're at your friend's house, pop them on their computer. Get on YouTube, subscribe. They'll thank you later. And if you are on YouTube, I say you drop a musical note emoji or a fire emoji in the comments.
I love it.
What do you think? All right, new friend of the pod, Myq Kaplan. If you were here in person, we would touch tips of microphones, but maybe we can do it through the camera and go ding, ding.
Ding. Thank you so much.
Yay!
MeMeCherry presents a series of fortunate events. Fortunate